I, Stephanie Terry,
I, Stephanie Terry,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support
History in Evansville, the city's first African-American mayor and the first woman taking the reins.
Who would have thought a little girl on Mulberry Street in the center city of Evansville, just a couple of blocks from the Lincoln Project, would be the mayor? Now I know it's an extraordinary responsibility, but I'm ready. And I know what comes next. I'll get to show others what is possible as I work to change lives and neighborhoods.
Evansville Mayor Stephanie Terry, her vision to build on economic momentum already in place, and why part of the plan starts in the heart of the Crescent City's neighborhoods. She's my guest on this edition of the Business and Beyond podcast. Hello and welcome to the Business and Beyond podcast presented by PNC. I'm Gary Dick. Well, they say home is where the heart is, and that fits Evansville's new mayor to a T.
When I think of home, I think of a place where there's love overflowing.
Mayor Stephanie Terry showing off her vocal skills during her swearing-in ceremony at, where else, the stage at her high school alma mater, Evansville Bosse. Stephanie Terry elected in November of 2023 to succeed longtime Mayor Lloyd Winnicky, now leading her hometown to what by all indications looks like a promising future. And I'm pleased to be welcomed on the podcast this week by the new mayor, the brand new mayor of Evansville, Indiana, Stephanie Terry. And Mayor Terry, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. It was great to be with you last week as we're taping this today. Last week in Evansville, as IBJ Media and Inside Indiana Business, we kicked off our annual Engage Indiana series in Evansville. And yet again, this is the third trip we've made to Evansville on this series. Once again, a great crowd, nearly 400 people at the University of Evansville to talk about key issues and what's happening in the region. And there's a lot happening. In fact, there was kind of some breaking news while we were down there. And that's the addition of the direct flight, kind of the reinstatement, if you will, of the direct flight from Evansville to Chicago. That's really big news, in particular for the business community.
Oh, it sure is. It's huge, and we're hopeful that Detroit will be coming soon. So air travel is pivotal to business development and us maintaining business here too. So we're excited to have a Chicago flight back, definitely.
Yeah, and it was for those listening who aren't familiar, the pandemic in large part caused the cancellation, the discontinuation, if you will, of daily flights between Evansville and Chicago, Evansville and Detroit. And the business community was really very concerned about getting those flights back. And as you say, you got Chicago back, and there's still some optimism maybe that Detroit will come back because you got the big Toyota plant down there. Massive facility there that needs that connectivity as well.
Yes.
Other developments, Riverfront, and I think we'll be here, according to you and also Lloyd Winnicky, who heads up the Evansville Regional Economic Partnership, be seeing the first renderings of long talked about massive redevelopment along the Ohio River. Talk about the potential that has, because it's not just Evansville, certainly is Evansville, but really a 50-mile swath, a stretch along the Ohio River. This is a pretty big deal.
It is. It is a big deal. And I mean, it's going to be transformative. We know that downtown is the hub of economic development, and we've underutilized, one of our greatest assets, which is the river. And so to activate that, I think the community is really going to receive that positively. So I'm excited about the opportunity to see the final renderings from Sasaki and really how we can continue to collaborate and begin to kind of phase that work in and transformation over the next few years.
Do you think, the word transformation gets used a lot, but, being down there last week and talking to a number of people, I get the sense that there is this building momentum with some of these projects, with the direct flights coming back to Chicago, the riverfront development you just mentioned, 420 Main, the site there likely to have redevelopment. That used to be the site of the tallest building in Evansville, been talked about for a long time. So a lot of things happening. Do you sense this is kind of a tipping point, maybe a point in Evansville's history where a lot of things may come together to make things happen there?
I think so. I think really results in the fact that there's a lot of collaboration and coordination of efforts. We've got multiple sectors all saying that we want the same thing, improve quality of place. And so to do that, we've all got to come together to ensure that happens. And that's what we're seeing, not only within, city limits, but then also outlying counties have, come alongside us to make sure we make these meaningful improvements. You
use the word collaboration, and every city and every region talks about, hey, we're great at collaborating. But I get the sense that there's really a feeling in Evansville that it's something that the community feels pretty deeply about. You're talking about the READY grants and coming together to make that happen. I know I talked with the representative from American Airlines who was there for the announcement of the return of the Chicago flight, and he brought up what he saw as collaboration in Evansville and Southwest Indiana. What is it about the region? What is it about Evansville, in your view, that makes this collaboration that everybody talks about a reality?
I think it boils down to good leadership. And I think former Mayor Winnicky really set the tone on, bringing people together. And we're continuing that under my administration and trying to expand and grow that even further. I don't know if you're familiar with the Promised Neighborhood, but I guess it was last year, there was a $30 million grant that was awarded to our community. And then we've had the private sector that's come alongside and matched that. And so we've got 60, plus million that's going to be invested in developing, uplifting neighborhoods. And then you've got 30 or so community partners sitting at the table. And so I don't know if that happens anywhere else, but, down here in Southern Indiana, I think we have figured out that it just makes more sense that, again, if we're walking hand in hand, we're going to be able to make some meaningful impact.
You talk about that Promised Neighborhood, and that is a big initiative. It really is. And I know the University of Evansville very, very much engaged in that process. Mm-hmm. To the extent you can, you don't have to get too far down in the weeds on this, but talk about this project. I think it's a 5-year initiative, but the anticipation is the impact will last a lifetime and can be, there are these promised neighborhoods that are popping up around the country, but I know there's a feeling down there that this Evansville model may be used as, again, a model that others may copy.
Absolutely. Because one thing that we've done that not other promised neighborhoods have done, we've established a sustainability council. And so we're already talking about, we have 5 years to kind of begin the work. We've already talking about what happens after the 5 years. How do we continue to sustain the work that we've started? But I think through this promised neighborhood, we're going to be able to hopefully put in play more wraparound support services for young people and their families in that whole concept of cradle to career, and ensuring that, again, if our youngest are thriving, then the community as a whole is thriving. And the University of Evansville has really been a tremendous lead on this effort. From housing, I think there's an opportunity there with the Promised Neighborhood, and some other business support too that's going to be critical.
Well, you just passed, I think, 100 days in office, so a milestone in your administration, and with that, delivered your very first State of the City. Give us kind of an overview, Mayor Terry, your thoughts on the state of Evansville.
I've said that, there's a lot going well and good for the city of Evansville. There's so much more potential. And I think that's where we are. We're trying to, reach that full potential, in areas of quality of place and, enhancing our quality of life overall in this community. And so we've put a lot of emphasis, and we'll put a lot of emphasis on our administration in infrastructure. We've got aging infrastructure from our pools and roads and some other things, but neighborhood revitalization, in addition to downtown, thinking about, those corridors outside of downtown and how those can be developed and uplifted. And then we know housing and crime also play a hand in that. And so we're really trying to be more aggressive in ensuring there's more affordable housing, but then doing some, innovative policing, let me say that, and changing our strategies and how we engage with the community from a law enforcement standpoint.
Yeah, as you look at some of those things, the riverfront development, big economic development projects, those types of things get the headlines and get all of the attention, all of the sizzle, if you will. But some of the things you just talked about, infrastructure, neighborhood development, so important, but really don't attract the headlines. How do you get the community to buy into that, to that vision, and creating, again, a more holistic community going forward?
Yeah, well, I think it just keep being a champion for it. And that's what I've done. And that was a part of really the message that I carried forward all last year. And I think it really resonated with folks that we want to maintain and kind of get the things that we have now up to a standard that people can be proud of. It's great. We're going to continue to do some of the nice, larger, flashy, shiny projects, because that's what we can celebrate, but also at the same time begin to address some of the issues that may not have been touched in some time.
Can you identify what you think is maybe the biggest challenge facing the city? What would you say is that one thing out there that really needs to be tackled?
Yeah, and I don't know if it's one thing very per se, because again, we've got aging infrastructure, the lack of affordable housing and the need for more, but a common thread in that is resources. And so having, the adequate funds to really tackle the problems that we know that are there. And so, one of the things we are doing is hiring a grant writer to help us identify and then go after. We're also being sure that we have teams both at the state and national, federal level to be, advocate on our behalf and really to help position us so that we're ready to garner as many resources as we possibly can.
You are the first African-American mayor, first female mayor as well, right? Of Evansville. Talk about that a little bit and what that means to you personally. Does it bring with it responsibility? Or I guess I just like your take on that, because it is significant, and like to know what you think about it.
I'm honored. I'm honored that the people of Evansville have elected me for this important role. It's a busy job, but I do take it very seriously. And because I am the first, I want to do everything I possibly can to serve the people well. And that has, been really my focus as an elected official. I want to be sure that I remain core to my values and serve people in the way that they desire to be served, to keep them top of mind in the decision-making process. But again, be the best example I possibly can for others to follow. I want to be an inspiration. It's a joy when I walk past little girls and they're like, "That's the mayor." We were just opened a new park on yesterday. And as soon as I came up, a young little girl ran up and was like, "You were in my school. You're the mayor." And I got on the swing, got on the little play structure with them and just engaged, because again, that what I represent to them, they're a part of history. And so it means a lot for me to ensure that I'm that light or inspiration for others.
And that is very real. I think that inspiration, that role model piece of it. I think I saw an interview you had done, and you mentioned Barack Obama and his election as president of the United States being an inspiration for you. So do you anticipate that you sitting in that mayor's chair in Evansville, Indiana, will have that same impact on young people in the community?
Yeah. Young people and old, because ironically, I'm supporting two women. They worked with me on my campaign. Closer. They walked doors with me, and they're running for office this year. And so, I'm feeling encouraged, and I think it's important that continue to support women that are pursuing this opportunity, because it's a good place for us to be, and it's important that everyone feels represented. And I hope that I will be able to be that type of mayor, whereas we say E is for everyone, and if they will see that through the leadership that I provide.
Yeah. And I should mention, you truly are a trailblazer, because you started your political career, I believe, on the Vanderburgh County Council. You were the first African-American on the council as well, right?
Yes, sir. I was. Yeah. I came out of college in 98. And one of the first things I did when I returned home was ran for school board. And so I was, in college and really involved in political action work. And so they just had that desire to do more. And I'm really excited about the journey that I've had. And again, I look forward to what's ahead.
Very good. Much more ahead with Evansville Mayor Stephanie Terry. When we come back, we'll talk about how this lifelong Evansville resident, we'll talk about her path to the mayor's office, growing up in Evansville, and a lot more when the Business and Beyond podcast returns.
At PNC Bank, we're committed to making a difference in the lives of our customers and communities by helping them move forward financially. As a Main Street bank, we try to do right by our customers with every encounter. Our local teams offer personalized financial advice to help guide you in making the best decision. We're proud to be part of your community. PNC Bank. See how we can make a difference for you at pnc.com. Copyright 2022, the PNC Financial Services Group, Inc., all rights reserved.
Welcome back to the Business and Beyond podcast presented by PNC. My guest this week is Evansville Mayor Stephanie Terry. She had just passed 100 days in office, brand new mayor of Evansville. And Mayor, again, thanks for joining me. You are a lifelong resident, right? A native of Evansville. Talk about growing up in Evansville and what that was like.
Oh, okay. Definitely, yes. Born and raised here. My parents actually were, from this area as well. And I attended many schools, but graduated from Bosse High School and took some time and went to Kentucky State University for 4 years and then returned back to the University of Evansville, where I got my master's in health service administration. And I'll tell you, for a very long time, I wanted to be a doctor. But, as time passed on, I learned I had different, skill sets. And so that led me to a path into the nonprofit sector, which is where I spent most of my professional career. The last 13 years, I was at the Children's Museum of Evansville. And so it was kind of a marriage of, two things. I was from an administrative capacity as the executive director, but also my love for the arts and performing arts and visual arts. I was able to marry those two loves of mine and serve that organization into a place that it is today. And so that's kind of the professional journey and involved in the community. But, I think it really started just what my parents instilled in me. My father's a minister. And so growing up in the church, I watched people serve one another. And so I think that just stuck with me. And that's what I've been, invested in all of my life.
Yeah. And I wanted to ask you about that because you mentioned you got out of college and you ran for school board, eventually getting on the county council there. And obviously now the mayor's office. That call to service, if you will, kind of instilled in you at home, right?
Yeah, it was. I mean, that's my model with my parents, watching them serve and work. And, I want to be just like them. Their work ethic is second to none. And so my dad always told me, when you go out, be at your best. And so I've tried to do that in everything that I'm a part of. And hopefully I'm sharing that same message with my sons and that, they'll follow it as well.
So started your career as in public health administration, veered off, as you mentioned, to the Children's Museum, and really had a significant stay there. I think, 12 years?
Yeah, they ended up being about 13 years by the time it all was said and done. So
talk about an asset like the Children's Museum and how that fits into a community like Evansville. Everybody talks about quality of place, quality of life, the need to have these things in place to keep people, but also attract talent, which is such a big issue. Talk about your time at the museum and how you grew that museum, both from a funding standpoint and otherwise.
Yeah. So when I came on, I think it was a period of really the museum had been without leadership for almost 18, 19 months. And so it was at a low point. And so there was a lot of rebuilding that had to occur. And so we were able to do that with new enhancements to the museum. And so that began to start to see, some really milestone achievements just before the pandemic. I feel like we had the highest year the museum had seen, nearly 83 or so thousand visitors to the museum. And then the pandemic hit us. And so we had to rebuild again. And just before I left, we had launched a $6.5 million capital campaign. And I was proud to say before I left, in which I was really diligent in making sure it happened, we had 5.1 of that already raised. And so they're in a really good position to finish out, almost an overhaul of the space and really help get it ready for the downtown growth that's, about to happen. So I think these type of assets, our zoo and other museums, they're critical just as you said, for attracting talent to our community. I can remember just a number of times where we've had local physicians that were looking to relocate here. Their families came to visit the museum while their spouse was interviewing at the hospital. And so that's so vitally important. And we're going to continue, I know with this administration, to just try to support arts and culture organizations. And that's why I'm looking forward to that Lilly Endowment, grant opportunity for arts and culture.
Yeah. Well, as you look at that, and certainly a big piece of that is always the private sector support for that kind of thing. And certainly Evansville is home to a lot of great public sector or private sector folks, the Jim Ryans and Bob Cooks and Ron Romaines, and there are many others too. Those come to the top of my head. How important, and how would you characterize for a city the size of Evansville to have the amount of private sector support for things like the Children's Museum, as well as other initiatives like direct flights and all those other kinds of things?
I would say that it's rare. I mean, we have a very philanthropic community, but I think it's, again, because it's individuals that are from this area. They're truly invested in the betterment of the city as a whole. And so, again, they give, very freely. And I mean, it's really a blessing that some of the key leaders that we have, like the Cook family and others, the Romaines, that are really, truly invested in community.
Yeah. While you were at the Children's Museum, that's when you got on the county council, right?
Yeah. You know what? Yeah, it was. So I was caucused in, I think, the summer of 2010. There was a longtime standing council member that relocated that caucused me in, but that was also an election year. And so, that fall, I was then elected, but within months. So I started at the Children's Museum in October and then was elected in November. So it was new all around, but it was a great year.
How do you describe that experience? Because that would have been your first political experience, right? What was that like?
Yeah, I mean, well, the first real run. I mean, I ran for school board. I also ran for city council early on too, and I wasn't successful in those early days. So this was my first real campaign, but I think what made the difference that just the party itself was really strong at that time, and we worked really in a collaborative manner throughout our campaign cycle, and so that was great to have that level of support during that time, and we've done that even last year, and I think that's why we were able to be successful just in our coordinated efforts and working as a team as a slate of candidates.
What prompted you to make the decision to run for mayor?
Well, I think more than anything, that feeling of, number one, it was opportunity. And I had former Mayor Winnecke said he was going to run again. I don't think I ever would have considered it. But when he said he was not, my phone started to, ring, and people were sending me texts and, but it took me, I think, almost 6 months or so. I had told myself, no, that's not really the direction. That's not what I'm supposed to do. But that never settled well with me in my gut. And so still with a lot of thought and a lot of conversation and prayer with family, I was sitting in a Martin Luther King Day program, and the message was about, if you're not at the table, who else is it going to be? Be bold and courageous. And that just kept resonating in my head. And I was like, wow, Stephanie, you've watched women all over this country, step up into, positions that, that are unreal. I mean, look at the vice president. Yeah. You can do this. And so I went home that night after that program, and I said to my husband, I said, it's time. And he said, are you serious this time? And I said, it's time. And here we are. It's about being a catalyst for change. And I just believe that I'm going to be able to do that and hopefully be able to make some meaningful impact in this community. Yeah.
You mentioned Mayor Winnecke, and it seems to me that the two of you have a really good relationship, and that the transition was an easy one. It could have been tough, but it was a good one. And I know he's had some very positive things to say about you. And the Mayor Winnecke had 4 terms, I think.
He did, yeah.
4 terms. Yeah, I think he made a great impact. Yeah, your assessment. Talk about the Lloyd Winnecke impact on Evansville.
Oh, wow. I mean, he's, from just a great personality in general. And I think, again, he was able to, energize and bring people together, really do some major significant economic development work in our community that really propelled, I think, his administration. And I think that's what, his legacy has and will be. And that work is continuing at EREP. And so we're we'll be able to work hand in hand to continue to some of the projects that he started. And so like yesterday, that park, that was a part of what some of the work that he was able to start. And so we'll finish some of the things that he put into play, but then began to work on some new things like the riverfront. And I'm excited to be a partner with him in doing that. He's been just a great resource. The transition, when I tell you, no matter what time I would reach out, he was very responsive in that. And I think he's continuing to keep that door open. And so it's a great thing.
You mentioned legacy. What would you, and this is so early, so it's way too early to start talking about your legacy, but as you think about that one day, what's your legacy? What do you want your time in office to be remembered for?
Well, and I've had that question before, and you're right, it's a little early, but
yeah.
More than anything, I want, honestly, those families and neighborhoods that have felt like they've been left behind, that they have been heard, and that I cared about them as well, and that I put some attention on the things that matter to them the most. And that's why the neighborhood revitalization is so important to me, because all parts of our community needed to be lifted up. And we've set that through our talent EVV goals that we want to, bring people out of poverty. And so if I can put my stake in anything, it's really honing in on that area. And again, that raising up people, they have access to good quality jobs, good paying jobs, that strong education system, and being an advocate and champion for our youngest citizens in our community. That's the type of person and leader that I want to be known for.
Hey, I've got to ask you before we end the podcast, you mentioned singing. You're a singer, right?
Yes.
Now, did you sing at your inauguration or no?
I sang just a little line of something. Yes.
What was it? Can you?
So when I was my senior year, I was in The Wiz, and I was Dorothy in The Wiz. And so at the end of the inauguration, I sang a little bit of When I Think of Home. So Home by Stephanie Mills. And so
that's great.
It was a special moment.
That's great. Well, Mayor Stephanie Terry, it has been a real treat to catch up with you very early in your administration, and I certainly look forward to many more interviews in the future, and wish you nothing but the best, and good luck in Evansville.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
All right. Evansville Mayor Stephanie Terry. And thank you for joining us on this episode of the Business and Beyond podcast presented by PNC. We are a weekly conversation with achievers in business, sports, entertainment, and beyond. And you can download all of our episodes and also get Indiana business news 24/7. All you have to do is go to InsideIndianaBusiness.com. I'm Gary Dick. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.